Hey, what is up you guys, Ed here from TechSource, and today we're going to be comparing the camera and video on both the Galaxy S5 and the HTC ONE M8. So before we jump into it, let's go over some camera specs real quick. The HTC ONE M8 has a 4 ultra pixel rear facing camera with a 2.0 aperture, which should allow for more light absorption and ultimately leads to better night shots, while the Samsung has an aperture of 2.2 and a 16 megapixel camera, which is great for editing and cropping. So without further ado, let's sit back, relax, and look at some samples. So here are some shots we took under low light conditions. Even though the M8 has a lower aperture, the S5 clearly does better under low light conditions. It just goes to show you that specs aren't everything. Here's another example of low light shot, and this time we use the flash on both phones to see the difference, and it's pretty obvious here that the S5 has a much clearer picture than the M8. Another thing we looked at was the HDR feature, and this allows for greater dynamic range between the lightest part of an image and the darkest part. So I want you guys to pay attention to the part under the tree while HDR is off. And this is what it looks like when using HDR, so you can clearly see a big difference there. However, with the HTC ONE M8, the difference is much greater when comparing the before and after shot. Another feature we took samples of was the S5 Selective Focus. This first picture has the sign and the background in focus, and when I use the Selective Focus feature, we can blur the background, although it's not really that accurate since the S5 uses software to do this. The M8, however, utilizes its second sensor to complete the same task, but with more accuracy. When it comes to cropping, the 16 megapixel on the S5 really comes in handy, seeing as you can crop it all the way to 75% while still maintaining a beautiful shot. However, the same can't be said with the 4 megapixel M8 camera. The more you crop, the worse it gets. Here's a quick shot taken with the front-facing camera on both phones, and we can clearly see that the M8 does a much better job due to its higher megapixel front-facing camera. When it comes to video, the S5 definitely has an edge because it can record in 4K. However, the M8 has a more vivid color contrast than the S5. It also appears to be less shaky while moving around, and while neither camera has a built-in stabilizer, the M8 stabilization software does a much better job than the S5. When it comes to autofocusing, the S5 wins hands down, as they claim to have the fastest autofocusing when it comes to smartphones, which is at 0.3 seconds. The difference is honestly minuscule. Picking a phone because of how fast it focuses shouldn't even be on the list. Nonetheless, a super fast autofocus is always nice to have. So which phone is the best when it comes down to their cameras? I wish it was a simple answer, but both have their strengths and weaknesses. I personally choose the S5 because I usually edit my pictures, and the 16 megapixel camera definitely comes in handy, not to mention it's more truer to life than the M8 when it comes to pictures, and the fact that it can shoot 4K is also a huge plus. The M8 on the other hand shoots better pictures when it comes to outdoors, and it's a great phone for people who take a lot of selfies, and not to mention the software on the M8 is much better than the S5 when it comes to image stabilization. Anyways, that's it for the video. If you guys enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like. If you didn't, you can dislike the video and let me know in the comment section what you guys think about the cameras. This is Ed from TechSource, and I will see you next time.